We're here today to look at metadata imports and exports in DSpace. Doing a lot of things with spreadsheets to, after you have items in the repository, if you have mass or batch operations that you need to do. So today we're going to be looking at batch imports. I'm just going to go over that real quickly. I had figured that if there were a lot of people in here, it would be nice to have some files that I know everyone has, because when we do this in person, the workstations will be set up ahead of time with kind of a suite of known dummy files, things like that, that we can upload. But with everybody on their home machines, we don't have that. So when doing remote instruction, it might be good to do this, set up a little zip package with some known files in it so that we know that you'll have photos, we know you'll have text documents to upload. So I'll walk you through doing a batch import real quick just for that reason. We'll look at exporting items, collections, and metadata, doing batch edits and metadata cleanup, moving and mapping items, and then I would like to have time to answer any spreadsheet questions, talk about just little things that I've discovered. A lot of us, especially if we've done particular types of cataloging or metadata, have worked quite extensively with spreadsheets and have some of kind of our own tricks that we have learned over the years. So first I'm going to walk you through batch imports via the web user interface real quick. We don't have to do the command line interface for this. We don't get into that at this level anyway. That is for the advanced DSpace workshop. But batch imports via the web user interface is pretty simple and straightforward and a good thing for people to know. So it's really good for if you have a large number of items all at once, if you have some large bit streams where it's going to stall out in the middle. So I would have liked to have it the last time we talked about the SEAS Sargassum early alert system uploads where I had those folders that had 200 files in them. It would have been great to have the batch importer for that, but I didn't. Then it was great to have it for all of those video files that I had to do where DSpace was stalling out in the middle of an upload that was taking like a half an hour or something. You get a blip in your connection, or if something flakes out on either your end or the repository end, then you've been sitting there with your machine spinning its wheels for a half hour for nothing. But if you can just zap the zip file package in there and have it all batch imported at once, then you're in good shape. Or anything else where you can front load the metadata and organizing things. Instead of having to type the same thing 500 times, you can copy and paste it into a spreadsheet. Or if you have some metadata that doesn't necessarily show up in the guided entry that we did last time, you can add columns to your spreadsheet, get it in there that way. So it can be a simpler procedure. You're just uploading one metadata file at a time with all of your lines in it for possibly hundreds of items. But then at the same time, when you have the guided entry, it's kind of telling you what DSpace wants from you. And if you're putting your metadata into a spreadsheet, then you're not getting that guidance. You kind of have to know what you're doing in advance. All right, so the batch importer, remember that when we're using DSpace, you've got your context options off in that sidebar off to the right. So if you would log into the training repository, we've got the link right there in the notes and tell you how to log in. And just please let me know whenever you're logged in. Just type it in chat or raise your hand or something. Okay, great. So Joseph is already logged in. So we're all set. So if you will look at the right sidebar, let me go ahead and share my desktop. you look over at the right screen, scroll down, and under Content Administration, you're going to see Batch Import Zip. So that's what we're going to be doing. Oh no, this is the... There we go. Okay, so the thing that I'm going to have you practice the upload with, go to the training documents collection from the last time we were here. And then today's training has an item called Intermediate DSpace. That has a copy of the Google Slides handout that I showed you last time. Well, no, for this time, sorry. It's got the Google Slides handout for today, and then under that you'll see Sample Collection zip file. So that Sample Collection zip file is what I'm going to want you to download. Just click on it, and it's going to have you save it any old place, wherever you want to, just as long as you can get back to it. I'm not going to want you to unzip it or anything right now. Maybe towards the end, it would be nice to poke around in there, and you can see it as an example of what we want these import files to look like. But I don't want to commit us to getting into that. It's kind of a little afield of what we need to record today and what we were telling people would be on this. Yes, it is under the UT RGV training community, under training documents, and then it's Intermediate DSpace Metadata Imports and Exports. Now, if you're viewing this on webinar, on the recording, it's going to be different, and we'll figure out some way of getting that to you. I haven't thought about that yet, but you'll be going to a different place. Joseph today is going to UT RGV Training Community into Training Documents Collection, and then the item is called Intermediate DSpace Metadata Imports and Exports. So the sample collection zip file, like I said, wherever. I've already got one, so I'm not going to save it right now. But then when you're done with that, go back to your DSpace and scroll down to Content Administration. And Joseph, if you would let me know whenever you've got that file saved. Okay, you found the collection, but not the file. Like, not the item, or... Because here's the link to the item. Okay, great. So once you get to the item, it doesn't have a thumbnail. My Google Slides handout hadn't been in there long enough for it to make one. But you should see second on the list of View Open, Sample Collection zip file. So right-click on that, or no, I think you can just plain old click on it and save it to your desktop, your downloads, wherever, just as long as you're going to be able to get back to it. Because you'll need to navigate to it with what we do in just a second. So now, once it's saved, you'll go over to Content Administration and click on Batch Import Zip. Okay, so go down to your collection, and I'm sorry, these are in some kind of mystery order. It doesn't appear to be what order they were put in. It's certainly not in any kind of alphabetical order, but just go on down and pick your collection. Then you'll choose your file. So, oh wow, it saved one anyway. I didn't want that. But choose it and then do Open. And then you will click on Upload Simple Archive Format Zip. And I think my import failed right now just because I already did that the other day. All right, so you got an error as well. That's no good. Okay, go ahead and give it one more try, and then if it still doesn't work, I think we'll be able to do this without you having to have those particular files. Just as long as you've got something in your collection to work with, we can still do this. Okay, so you got the attempting to create identifier as well. That's strange and I can't explain it, but like I said, it shouldn't really be a deal breaker. We can still do this. You've still got plenty of items in your collection from last time, so we'll just work with those. This is the main part of what I was wanting to talk about anyway. In fact, we could probably just edit this whole thing out later on if we want to. Anyway, let's look first at exporting from DSpace. So you can export just a plain old item. You can export an entire community or a collection. And those two types of things get exported as zip files, like the one that you just tried to import, and it should have worked. I'm not sure why it didn't. But most of what we're going to talk about today is metadata, which is going to be exported as comma-separated text, which then allows you to work with it as a spreadsheet. I'm not sure what we'll do when we've got people who are not on Windows machines, because I know all of mine from working in Excel, and I'm sure that other spreadsheet programs do much the same stuff. I just know what I know in Excel, and I know how to make Excel play nice with things. So today we're going to be looking at things in Excel. So again, it's going to be in the sidebar, and it'll be on any community, collection, or item pages. So you're going to navigate to the thing that you want to export. If you want to export an entire community, you navigate to that community. If you want to export only a collection or only an item, then you go to that particular thing. So please go ahead and navigate under UT RGV Training Community. Probably best to go ahead and go to your own collection. All right, once you're in your collection, you will go over to the sidebar, scroll down under Context, so yeah, go into your collection, scroll down under Context, and you'll see Export Metadata. Then save that to, again, wherever you want. And you don't have to leave it as this name. In fact, I rarely do. If you want to put a different collection on it, a different name on it, if you want to put like Joseph's metadata, if you want to put whatever project you're currently working on, it doesn't have to be this. This just lets you know this file name comes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is the identifier for this repository, the training repository. And then 5, 2, 6, 8 is this collection within there. So everything has an identifier number. It'll be the number that is associated with that community, that collection, that item, whichever, is going to be what that second number comes from. So now once that gets downloaded, go ahead and double click on it to open it up in Excel. Again, assuming that you're on a Windows machine. If you're not and it doesn't work, let me know and I'll try to help. It should come up already in a nice format. Like maybe not particularly appealing to look at, but at least it's going to already be in columns instead of a big blob. And if it came up in a big blob, we could do text to columns, and I'd walk you through that, but I'm hoping I don't have to, so that we're not spending a big bunch of time on that. Okay, good. So the values separated correctly. You've got nice columns. And do you mind if I close down my copy of your repository data and work with my own one? All right, cool. So I'm going to shut down yours. And then here's mine. So notice that the column headers up top are the Dublin core fields, except for ID. That's, like I said, the identification number that each collection, each community, each item has. So every item has this. Over by collection, you'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like I said, that is associated with the training repository. And then you'll see which collection it's in. Notice that up at the top here, this one, the first item we see, that has a double pipe in it. The double pipe is used in here to separate multiple values that are in the same field. So instead of having like 15 columns with different subjects in them, you can put the 15 different things in the same cell in your Excel spreadsheet and then separate them with double pipes. Oh yeah, this is from the other day. We mapped my pictures of my dogs in the snow into Sean's dog collection. So that's why this one already shows up with having a mapping. Or here in the handouts, in the item where we had uploaded the slides from last time, it shows both Narissa and me as authors, again, separated with a double pipe. So now if things are mapped into more than one collection, the owning collection is the first one listed, and then the mapped collections, so that's not the primary one, that's other places that you have it showing up, are not listed first, for lack of better phrasing, and they just show up afterwards. Yes, double pipes in the collection column means that it has been mapped somewhere else. And that's also how you accomplish mapping things in here, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. You can type in a double pipe, type in another collection number, and then when you re-upload that data, the result is that that item gets mapped. Oh, sorry about that. So now that you have a metadata spreadsheet, you can edit things and get a whole big bunch of edits done at once without having to click into your item, click into edit this item, figure out what all you want to put in, and work with that kind of tedious screen. Which if you've got just one or two things to do, that's great. If you have more things to do and you don't want to be clicking into each item individually, then spreadsheets are the way to go. Now remember, last time I had mentioned that if you capitalize things differently in, say, a subject field, then it gets indexed as different words, which is no fun. But with batch editing via spreadsheet, you can clean it up fairly easily. You can add new metadata fields. Like if you have a field that doesn't tend to show up in the guided entry, if you have a specialized field that you're only using for a particular project or for a particular collection, then this is a good place to put that in. If you go back to something and say, oh, well, hey, we put in all of this metadata and now it's outdated and we don't want it anymore, you can strip it out. So you do your edits on your desktop in the spreadsheet, and then there is a button that says Import Metadata. So that's how you upload it back into DSpace. You'll come up with a screen where it shows you what changes have been made. You approve it if all goes well. And then you've gotten a whole bunch of edits done at once. All right, so now I'm talking about the photographs that I wanted you to have uploaded, which did not happen. But instead, go ahead and take a look at your spreadsheet. And just think of something you want to change. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't have to be a permanent change that you want to make. Okay, so this is a great example. I'm really glad that you asked that. Joseph sees that in his spreadsheet he has two DC fields for subject, and the first one is DC subject with just some closed brackets after it. And then you have DC subject EN underscore US. The EN underscore US means that it's in US English. So there's not a difference in the intention, and offhand, I don't know how that difference came up. But the difference that I can tell you is the ones in the DC subject NUS column. It tells you that that's the language. So if you put in some subjects in, say, French, it'll have a different value inside those square brackets. So since you know that your subjects are in English, why don't we go ahead and move them over into the US English column? All right. You want me to talk you through it or show you what to do? Because I've got the same file, and that's probably pretty good. Okay, you think you know you remember how to do this. I remember it from like 5 minutes ago, so I'm good. But yeah, here you've got the subject with only the square brackets. You'd like to move it over to the one that tells you what language it is. So the way I would do it, and this doesn't mean that this is how you have to do it, I would just take that, cut it, go over here, put in a double pipe, and all right, it comes up already, which is fine. If it didn't, you would still paste. And let me know when you've got it all set. All right, so when you get it done, be sure and save your file. And then what you're going to do is come back over to your DSpace. And apologies for scrolling all around here. Okay, it's under Content Administration. You're going to click on Import Metadata. Choose a file where you will navigate to your own one. And here, I think I'll do something else on my one. In fact, I'm going to take out all of these because that's not my stuff and I don't want to be messing with it. If there are lines that you're not actually working with, you can certainly go ahead and delete them. Oh yeah, here was going to be my example. My cute little dog pictures from the other day. Oh my goodness, somehow some of them got labeled cats. How did that ever happen? So what I'm going to do, replace it all. And then I save it. Oh wow, this is loud. Sorry about the noises from my machine. And then I'm going to go ahead and upload them back in. So that's the one I was just working with. And again, naming them different things so that you can remember what file you're working on, I highly recommend it. With any luck, you're going to get a screen with the nice little pastel green upload successful thing. If something's messed up, you'll get the pastel red TDL DSpace screen of fail. And then that means you got to go back and fix something. So once you get that, click on Apply Changes. Be sure and do that. And it's especially facepalm inspiring if you have a sheet where you've done like 100 changes and then you have to scroll all the way down. It will be at the very bottom, but if you do not click Apply Changes, your changes don't get applied. So Joseph, have you gone ahead and uploaded your spreadsheet, your corrected spreadsheet back in there? If you change certain types of metadata, like unidentified language, are there certain properties that disappear? That's a really good question, and I don't know. I don't think it loses anything. I think it just, I think the language, do you mean the language of the metadata? Like that ENUS label that was in the square brackets? Oh, okay, for a language not on the drop-down list such as Czech. You would need to, I believe you could put something in there if you knew what the approved abbreviation for Czech was. I would guess it would be CZ. Because, yeah, I haven't worked with anything that's not a Roman alphabet language. So I've pretty much only worked with things that are already in there. But, no, it's a good question. I think that's one of those things I was saying where if it doesn't show up in your guided entry, that's a thing you might want to be able to add. So you could just either leave it blank or go in and fix it later on. But yeah, you would need to know what was the accepted abbreviation for that language, and you would just put it into those square brackets instead of where it says ENUS. All right, so other than that, it worked, right? All right, and it worked. So yeah, like I said, if it worked, you'll get this screen, scroll down and click on Apply Changes. If it didn't, like I put in a column earlier just to get this screenshot for DC nonsense, as far as I know, that is not an actual metadata element. At least it isn't yet. So DSpace kicked it back to me and said, unknown metadata element, go back and fix this. No changes were detected. And even if you have other changes in there, It'll tell you no changes detected until you go back, fix the thing that you got wrong, and try it again. So then you go down, click on Apply Changes, and you're all set. So now again, to move or to map items, you go into your spreadsheet and work with the collection number. If you just straight up change it, then that is how you move items. So last time I believe we were asked if you can move a collection into, say, a different community, and you can't, but what you could do is export the whole thing, create a new collection in whatever your desired community was, and then do a mass move this way. That would probably be the simplest way to accomplish that. So just to wholesale move them, have no remnant of the item in the old collection, you just change the collection number. To map items, once again, you have multiple collection numbers in the column that says collection. You leave the owning collection first in the listing and have the mapped collection not first, or collections, because you can map to multiple places, and separate them once again with a double pipe. So I created a mapping collection to practice mapping things into. If you go into your spreadsheet, choose some items that you would like to map, and then under collection, append that string that I have right there, because that, the 5284, is the identifier for the mapped collection, or the mapping collection, sorry. Then once again, you save your spreadsheet and import the metadata, very much like we did last time. So, okay, if you need to know where it is, you can just get your spreadsheet. No, I didn't want that. Sure, I will paste the collection number in just a second. Or you can navigate to it. And then I've got mapping collection. And it's just this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 / 5284, which I poached right out of the URL at the top. So go into your spreadsheet, and I will close down yours so that we're not messing around with the same items. And I'll get mine. Add a double pipe. Remember, leave the owning collection first. The mapped collection comes second. Oops. Then you save it. Always make sure you're leaving it in comma-separated value, so CSV format. And then under Content Administration, import your metadata. And it shows, it doesn't tell you which item it was. Like in any format you're going to be able to read very well. But it does give you the identifier, and then it tells you what collection it's mapping to. So apply your changes, and return. And let's go look in there and see what all we've got mapped in now. So now we've got a bunch of items mapped in here. They do not now live in this collection. They still live wherever they were. But they show up in the mapping collection. So as I had said earlier, if there are lines or columns that you're not editing, you can go ahead and take them out. Don't worry about if you take out that column, DSpace erasing your content. It's not going to do that. If you haven't changed it, it doesn't still need to show up in there. You just can't take out the identifier or the collection. Don't ever take those columns out. Those got to stay. But anything else that you're not working with at that time, take it on out. Make your spreadsheet a little smaller, a little more manageable, especially since there is a limit on how long of an import spreadsheet you can put in. The documentation I looked at earlier when I was trying to make sure I had everything accurate for this, it said 1,000 lines. I had thought previously that it was more like 200. Like on a project that we did around here, we cut it down into smaller chunks. And I don't know if that, oh, that's rows. I'm not sure if there is a limit on columns. I think that columns, the only limitation is that there's only so many different metadata fields. Right. In theory, it's unbounded. They could always come up with more fields for you to have to do. But right now, there is a finite number of Dublin Core fields that are actually in play out there. So you could have a really big, long, nasty spreadsheet with columns way out past your arm. But there's not a hard limit on it. There's not a externally imposed limit on it. But there is kind of a limit on how many lines your spreadsheet can be. Like I said, I had thought it was 200. I seem to remember that's what size of chunks we were breaking our enormous nightmare spreadsheet up into. But that could have been because it was an earlier version of DSpace. It could have been just because really huge spreadsheets are a monster to deal with. And again, you're going to have that enormously long screen of changes to scroll through. So once again, find and replace, excellent for stuff like that, like how I did cats and dogs earlier. And you could do that as well with moving or mapping items. Just sometimes Excel's going to try to be helpful. So if you do that little trick where, say you can click and drag, like you can double click on this and it'll fill in blank space. You just go down to the bottom right corner, double click. Oh, no, I didn't want that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. But if you try to do that with things that look like a number, sometimes Excel is going to try to be helpful. So if you drag this down, like if you were to try to say, oh, I want everything to get mapped into this place. Look how it did. It did 5256, but then instead of having my 5284 on the end, it started counting up. Excel doesn't always get it that you don't want it to count things. and it'll do that as well. Yes, be very, very, very careful with series drag and drop. Make sure that it is in fact doing what you want it to do and not what it thinks you're telling it to do, because you can get into some serious difficulty that way. So that's about all that I have. If you've got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, so Laura, did you want to stop the recording?